Chapter 27. No exoneration after incarceration.
We've asked him the same questions 4 days in a row, Chief, but his answers haven't changed. His colorful commentary has, but not his core answers.
Leo sighed, and the officer beside him looked up from where he was consulting a clipboard full of transcripts.
Sir?
The man asked. I'd like to talk to him, Officer. Leo had to stop to read the name embroidered on the man's uniform. Wilson. He'd met this officer before, but he'd seen so many faces in the past 2 weeks that connecting faces and names, and actually retaining the connection, was difficult. His visit to Paddock's skyscraper office had left him drained anyway. What he wanted most of all right now was sleep. Pieces were beginning to fall together to form a puzzle Leo didn't want to see. The more he put the pieces together, the uglier the picture became. The smart thing to do would be to stop, but Leo seemed to be a glutton for punishment, and if he stopped now, his conscience would never let him hear the end of it. Officer Wilson raked his clipboard with a thumb claw.
He does like to talk, sir, but I think we've already got most everything useful out of him that we're gonna get.
Officer Wilson, I learned my interrogation methods from Walter Bradburn. If anyone knows how to make someone talk... Leo trailed off and was happy to see the recognition in the officer's eyes. So he doubled down. It's going to be a loud but boring conversation. I would suggest that you take a coffee break, Wilson. The officer before him gulped, glancing through the one-way mirror at the muzzled Knoll sitting handcuffed to a table. With a series of quick nods, he handed the clipboard over to Leo.
Good luck, sir,
he said, before leaving the room with such haste Leo thought he was going to trip. Quickly, Leo leafed through the transcripts.
What is your name?
Rolf.
Last name?
None yet.
Why were you at the hospital?
Seemed like a fun place to be.
Why did you attack security?
They swung first.
What did you steal?
Nothing.
Where are your friends now?
Don't have any. The interviews were more extensive than that, but the answers were always clipped and irreverent. They were also singularly focused on the hospital and the events there. Leo had a slightly different angle to pursue, one that he didn't want witnesses around for. Tucking the clipboard under an arm, he took a swig from his thermos. The coffee inside was tepid, but all his spare firearm batteries were at home or the office. At this time of night, he needed the caffeine more than the warmth anyway. The door to the interrogation room didn't have a lock. Once restrained, occupants weren't expected to go anywhere, not with the legs of the table being embedded in the concrete floor. The kit looked up as Leo entered the room, and he grinned beneath the muzzle.
I haven't seen you since the hospital,
he said, with minor difficulty. His lips could move, but the muzzle kept his teeth clamped together. Likewise, Leo said, setting his clipboard and thermos on the table. Your friends hit me with an ambulance, so I had to stay a few extra days. Rolf laughed. The metal chains on the handcuffs rattled together as he stretched his wrists. He couldn't lift them more than a few inches off the table. The laughter died as he realized Leo was serious.
Probably didn't help that I'd roughed you up beforehand.
No, Leo noted dryly. It didn't. Why the muzzle? His grin widened.
Obviously, I'm a biter.
Leo regarded him, noting where the leather straps had flattened fur on his snout, cheeks, and the short hair on his head. Muzzles left a bad taste in Leo's mouth. Like straitjackets, they were a necessary evil sometimes, but that didn't always make them palatable. I don't believe you.
Why not? I got teeth, and I know how to use them. You can do a lot of damage with a well-placed bite.
True, Leo admitted. But you had plenty of time to bite me when we fought at the hospital. That tells me two things. You're a practiced brawler, but not a biter, because you weren't as desperate as you should have been. And this is your first time in prison, or at least anything worse than juvie. Once people have been in prison and get out, that's when they're willing to bite to stay out. But you're not there yet, are you, Rolf? The kit went very still. His brown and black tail was a little frizzed out, but it drooped to the floor. His silence spoke volumes. Vanina, this kid was out of his depth. Leo walked around the table, and Rolf looked up in surprise. The confidence in his eyes melted into fear as Leo got within touching distance. Worse, he flinched as Leo reached up to grab the muzzle. Working quickly, but carefully, Leo loosened the barbaric thing before removing it entirely. Some part of him worried that the kit would bite at his fingers, but his initial read was correct. His gut had been right. This kit wasn't there yet. Rolf worked his jaw and rubbed his cheeks against his shoulder to itch at the flattened strips of fur. Discarding the muzzle on the other end of the table, Leo took a seat across from the Nulf. Rolf regarded him with suspicion. If you're trying to get me to talk by being nice to me, it's not going to work. I'll give you the same answers I gave them before they muzzled me, and after. You ever been locked up before, Rolf? Rolf's initial look of worry was swept away by a snarky grin. I'm a Nulf living in Cyphus. Every day is being locked up, even if it's not a formal thing. You've had it rough before. Probably spent a night or two or three hungry sometimes. Probably been chased off, yelled at, abused, called names, gotten into fights, stolen stuff from people, had stuff stolen from you. Am I right? The kit considered, then nodded in smug satisfaction. Yeah, but I usually get the last word. I ain't no Mueller. Leo snorted at the bravado. No, of course you're not. You're tough and brave. Takes a brave person to go into a hospital and flood the ventilation systems with toxic gas. Rolf's ears lowered an inch, his smile dwindling. They already told me that a couple people died. That was never part of the plan. Whose plan? Your plan? Rolf's lips twitched, but he gave no reply. Who paid your friend to kill me? That caught Rolf so off guard, the kit looked like he'd been slapped while expecting a kiss. What? Your friend that I chased into the basement, to Zale. He has personal reasons to want me dead, but that's not what he cited. He and I fought, and during that time he said, I got paid already, you need to be dead. So who paid him? Rolf shook his head. We're not supposed to be killing people, unless it's a dirty 13. They're the ones that deserve it. Snobs are scum, to be sure. No offense or anything. You've been halfway decent. His gaze traveled to the discarded muzzle. But we don't set out to kill him. Or anyone, really. How do you know his name? It hasn't come up with any of the other snobs that have questioned me. Like I said, there's history between us. Someone paid him to kill me. They pay you to rob the hospital too? You guys need money or something? Telling you, man, I don't know what you're talking about. Tazale handles finances, but it's not like we need much money. The hospital wasn't about money. No? Leo asked. Used blood, prescription drugs, medical grade shimmer. All things that could fetch a fair price in the right market. Like, say, the necro market. It's for us, not... Rolf's teeth snapped together as he cut himself off. Leo took an educated stab in the dark. Oh? So you guys are using it. So maybe not necro. Maybe fractal? You guys all had the glow when we were fighting. Again, the kit said nothing. It wasn't confirmation, but it certainly added to Leo's suspicions. So you need money for equipment? Or labor cost for making fractal? I'm telling you, I don't know anything about money. Who wants me dead? I don't know, Rolf said, handcuffs clanging as he banged his fists on the table. I don't know, man. Tazale does stuff without us all the time. I'm not his dad. I don't keep track of what he does or for who. Well, he intentionally blew up my car. Rigged it so it would blow when I started it. Nearly killed me and his mother. So whatever he was up to, I'd say it's kind of important to know about. Rolf blinked, his eyes going almost blank. Taz tried to blow up Mrs. N? There's no way. No, that has to be a lie. You're trying to trick me. Get me to say something I shouldn't. There's no way he would... Leo interrupted. I was supposed to be the only one in the car. I always drove alone to and from crime scenes. I have for 3 years now. Anyone who knows even a little about me knows that. And his mother only ever rode the bus. I don't think anyone expected me to offer to drive anyone around. People don't think about Nolfs in cars. Fanina, am I just supposed to make the nice lady walk everywhere? So I talked her into going along with me. On the way to my car, I passed a Nolf, about your height, but not quite as muscled, dressed in a green and white jacket, just like you and your friends were wearing in the hospital. He practically confessed to it when I brought it up at the hospital, but I don't think he knew his mother was going to get in the car. I don't think he stuck around to make sure things worked. But if he did know, and did it anyway, then either he likes hurting people, or the money was really good. And based on what happened with the casualties in the hospital, I'm definitely starting to lean towards the idea that your friend likes hurting people, and doesn't really sweat the little details like which people he hurts. The kid at the table looked shaken. All bravado had drained. He just shook his head again and again, eyes white like he'd seen an anima spawn crawl out of the corner. Not Taz. No, not Taz. You're lying to me. Not Taz. It was a firearm explosion, and your friend had a lot more of those back at the hospital. Why are you telling me any of this, man? Because I want to find the truth. Because I'm pretty sure your friend is going to hurt more people. Because for people like that, it gets easier each time. And how long do you think it's going to be before the people that get hurt are his friends? How long until more of your friends end up in here? Worse, how long before they end up in the morgue? He almost got his own mother killed. What makes you think he actually cares about any of you? You're going to a lot of trouble to protect him, but you think he'd really do the same in your shoes? Rolf's eyes were watering now, but he held himself together pretty well. Leo didn't feel good pushing a sore spot like this, but he needed information, and if this kid had any, he'd either spill it now or take it to his grave. Finally, Rolf met his eyes. You don't know Taz. I don't have anything to say to a dirty snop. Listen, Rolf, you're on the fast path to Fanina on Cyphus. If you get jail time here in District 8, you're going to the Nolf block. The people there are there for a reason. People who have hurt men, women, and kits in ways that would keep you from sleeping for the rest of your life. Cyphus hardly ever enforces the death penalty anymore. Realistically, worst case is they exile you from the bulb. That's a mercy. Death by snop? For some, that's a mercy. The words ate into Leo's tongue like acid, and his cheeks felt instantly dry. But he needed this kid to understand. Needed him to see the danger he was in. The guards of District 8? You've had a taste of their methods. Leo patted the muzzle. Rolf stared at it like it was going to bite him. You think they give a dross what happens between Nolfs and here? Kit, they're not going to care what you did. Punishment doesn't have to fit the crime around here. The rulebook of basic Sneppered rights and decency does not apply to Nolfs. Now, they're not going to tell you any of this. Why? Because they see your smug face, your snarky comments, and they like your fire, Kit. They're going to throw you to the wolves and watch the fire get stamped out. All those people in there who are used to doing bad things will do those bad things to you. Because you bravely went and killed defenseless people in a hospital. And in their sick, twisted way, they excuse doing bad things to you, because that's a level of low most of them wouldn't consider. And the guards are going to stand by and watch, and laugh, and feel good about themselves, because to them, you deserve it. If the kid had seen ghosts before, he was messing his pants now. I can't. I think it's great that you want to protect your friends. It's an admirable trait in anyone. But right now, there's a big picture problem that I think is getting swept under the rug. Locking you up as the one who took the fall for his friends is just one small part of that. I'm not asking you to rat out your friends. I don't care where they went. I don't care who was involved. But I need to know what this stunt at the hospital had to do with the man who tried to blow me up. I want to know why I needed to be removed from the picture. I want to know what your friend needs so much fractal for, because more people are going to get hurt if we stand aside and do nothing. And believe me, Those debts will settle on your conscience. Knowing that your actions or inactions led innocent people to die because you were too brave and tough to expose your friend. He's not who you think he is, Rolf. So the question is, who are you going to be? If you talk to me, I'll talk to the judge and might be able to work out some sort of a deal on your behalf. But my hands are tied unless you talk to me. Rolf's eyes were red at the edges now. He bit his lip hard once, twice. Then he slammed his fists on the table. The muzzle jingled. Leo's thermos wobbled. Rolf's shoulders sagged. I don't know anything. Todd doesn't talk about his plans, not details. He doesn't trust anyone with specifics until the day of. His thumbs pinched inward as he tugged against the handcuffs, but they held fast. Look, man, we're just a group of people who are sick of getting pushed around and hated for no reason. Alchemy gets a bad rap because people think the outside world is toxic. And alchemy's dangerous, but it's natural. So we make safe fractal. Not that addictive dross on the streets. To try to show people that they've got it all wrong. Then we put on demonstrations and rallies and distribute it. We don't kill people. Thinking back to the way this kit fought, Leo believed him. Rolf had tried to incapacitate him, not kill him. His friend Tazael, on the other hand, Tazael had pulled the trigger. Intent to kill had certainly been there. Too many pieces were coming together. What did a graffiti gang symbol, several shot and killed security guards, and a car sabotaged with alchemy to explode all have in common? A kit with a grudge towards Sneppards, especially law enforcement. There still had to be someone above him, someone pulling the strings and directing Tazael. But who? For what it's worth, Rolf, I believe you. I don't think you have it in you to kill someone. Rolf flinched, and Leo added, It's not a bad thing. Taking a life shouldn't be a trivial decision. Hold on to that hesitancy. It might save you from a lot of grief someday. The Nulf drew his lips inward, letting out a long breath. Then he spoke in a quiet voice. Those people who died at the hospital, that was an accident. I mean, we were in there breathing the stuff ourselves, and filters only do so much against necrom gas. So Taz would have been careful with his mixtures. There's no way he would intentionally endanger us. Leo didn't respond. He just sat there, watching the kit and letting him think things through. Eventually, his patience was rewarded as Rolf hung his head. He has been a little more on edge the last month. At our most recent rally, he claimed credit for what happened at that big battery factory. The rest of us played it up because it got people excited and thinking that they shouldn't just have to accept the life they've been given. But he's been more serious and less fun lately. Biggest shift in that direction was when he took over after his brother died. He wants the world to see Rin's vision. That's his brother. Leo nodded, not feeling a need to share that his own encounters with Rendal had planted a similar seed. One that had taken full root that night in Anima's pleasures. Leo just hadn't watered it for 3 years. There's a big rally planned soon. Taz said to expect our biggest turnout yet. That's why we needed so much stuff for Fractal.
Where?
Rolf shrugged, still unrecovered from his slump. I don't know. Taz told us he was still picking a place. Was Tazael really the one picking a place? Or was it up to the person, or people, who wanted Leo dead? This whole case was a mess. 6 dead 13. An alchemy teacher, a drug-making street punk, his old boss's collection of notes on convict alchemancers, the convenient rearranging and consolidating of power amongst the 13, multiple attempts on Leo's life despite him feeling like Cyphus's most useless detective, an attack on a hospital, an upcoming rally. So many pieces to this puzzle, and Leo was struggling to see how to put them all together. At the very least, what was before him was plain and simple. The man across from him was a kit who'd been left to take the fall, one who didn't realize the gravity of that fall. While he was complicit, He shouldn't have to bear the punishment the mastermind deserved. With a sigh, Leo grabbed his thermos and the clipboard. What? Is that it? Rolf asked. Leo gave him a thin smile. Unless you've got something else to tell me. The kit's eyes darted around as he searched for something to add. He laughed, nervous and panicked. I really don't know much, man. It's why people keep me around. I just do what I'm told. Well, think on what you know, Leo said as he stood. Got someone else to visit in here, but I'll check in before I leave for the night. Rolf's gaze darted to the muzzle, its worn leather and buckles looking ominous in the firearm lighting. Do I have to... He gulped as he trailed off. Fanina. This place was almost as bad as the hospital. No, in this way, it was worse. Leo grabbed the muzzle, and Rolf's chains rattled as he flinched away. It won't stop them from putting one on you later, but I'll take this one with me. The kit looked shocked at first, but he nodded. Then, in a surprising display of sincerity, he inclined his head. Thank you, sir. It immediately brought to mind another image, that of a Nolfin woman, bowing as if to royalty before saying, Thank you for your time. Leo didn't deserve this kind of treatment. He didn't want it. He'd become a snob to help people. He didn't deserve praise or thanks. Not until he'd actually done something helpful. Now he was chief of Precinct 3. He felt even further detached from his goal of making a difference and helping people. Maybe he could use it to help this kid. It wasn't his jurisdiction, but maybe Melissa could help him figure something out. He had to try. No sooner had he left the interrogation room than the helplessness hit home anew. His mind screamed its confusion. His conscience screamed that he'd given Rolf false hope. His body screamed for Necrol. Running a hand through his hair, he focused on breathing. In, out. In, out. Small, manageable steps. One thing at a time. He could do this. He had to do this. Who else would? Everyone else was content to ignore, to sweep under the rug, and to turn tragedy into personal gain. Leo wasn't made that way. So he put one foot in front of the other, leaving the front end of the prison, and heading for the Nolfin block, walking towards the stench of Bradburn's dirty laundry. The warden's tail flicked at odd diagonals as his eyes grew to the size of sugar cubes.
Tigra, sir. He's one of the biggest, nastiest personalities on the block. From Genthis, sir, with a chest that could hold two of you standing side by side. He's over 20 years into a life sentence for theft, assault and battery, and 2 successful escapes from this prison. Whenever he ends up mad, people's bones get broken, and wheelchairs become necessities. He's in solitary every other week. Nearly all of us have been swiped at whilst trying to bring the monster food, so most of us just chuck it through the bars and run. Nobody ever comes to see Tigra. You're positive you're not mistaken about the name?
Leo sighed. Sounded like he was in for quite the interview.
Yes, Warden, I'm positive.
The warden's mug of coffee shook in his hand, and he forced a shrug.
Your funeral, Chief.
His overstuffed keyring rattled as the warden scooped it out of a desk drawer and left his office. Leo followed close on his heels. Seeing the block through the windows, it was late enough at night that the common areas were empty. A lone Nolfin janitor, sporting his own bright jumpsuit, wiped down tables and benches. They passed cell after cell, most of which sported a pair of Nolfs. Not many were sleeping yet. Most were still up talking, or playing cards. Nearly all of them stopped what they were doing to offer jeers and insults as Leo and the warden passed. Circling the outer ring of the block, they reached a staircase. Only instead of going up, as Leo would have expected, the warden led him down. He unlocked a door, labeled B2, and stepped into a concrete hall. The lighting down here was Fyrum, and it looked like 2 out of every 3 bulbs was depleted. What bulbs remained were waning fast. Every cell down here was a single cell. Unlike above, there were no extra beds, no windows, hardly any room for walking. The toilets were low enough to the ground that they looked designed for children to use. It would have been painful for Leo to use one like that, let alone a Nulf with an extra foot of height on him. The sinks looked to be as helpful of a water source as a drinking fountain in a public park. It was cold down here, but each inmate had only a single sheet to work with. Though the Nulfs upstairs had been rude and belligerent, they were nothing like these men down here. The ones in these sub-basement cells were quiet to an unsettling degree. While the ones upstairs might cause problems, the ones down here felt like the types that would take great joy in doing terrible things to you before making you disappear forever. Leo's fur felt like it was standing on end, and he stayed in the center of the walkway, far from the bars. Ahead, the warden unlocked yet another door, holding it open for Leo as they entered. This one held a few rooms marked by solid steel doors with viewing slits. This had to be the solitary cells. To his surprise, the warden continued past them all. "He's not in solitary right now?" Leo asked as the warden unlocked a new door. The warden glanced over his shoulder. "Solitary? Not officially, no. Tigra's been the only one in his cell block for a while. Used to have more down here with him, but the others eventually all got out on good behavior. Unfortunately for Tigra, he doesn't have much of that in him." Pushing the door open, the warden reached inside for a light switch. Flicking it on lit a single Fyrom bulb in the center of the room. The room contained 6 cells, 5 of which had open doors. "Tigra?" the warden called in without actually entering the room. "You got a visitor. Police chief from District 3's here to see you." A loud growl rumbled out of a cell in the back corner. "Not interested. Go away." The words were slow and punctuated with almost equal emphasis in an accent Leo hadn't encountered before. The words were snap, but the accent wasn't really designed for it. Turning to Leo, the warden patted him on the shoulder with an unconvincing smile. "He's all yours, Chief. Good luck. I'll be on the other side of this door catching a few winks, and I'll poke my head in about 10 minutes to see if Tigra's turned your head into a soup bowl." "You're not going to stay in here with me?" The warden looked surprised at the suggestion. "Chief Bradburn didn't like anyone around when he came down here to visit. Valued his privacy. I assumed you were the same?" As much as Leo didn't want to, he nodded. Witnesses were only a good idea right now if they were witnesses he could trust. At the moment, the list of people Leo trusted had less than 5 names on it. The warden closed the door, and much to Leo's relief, didn't lock it. The cells in this room looked the same as the rest of the ones he'd seen down here. No windows, tiny toilet, useless sink, wafer-thin bed. Keeping the warden's descriptions in mind, Leo continued to hug the center of the aisle as he walked towards the back. As he glanced into the only occupied cell in the room, he saw enormous orange and black shoulders poking out at the top of a single thin bedsheet. 2 equally orange and black feet hung over the end of a bed not designed to accommodate a giant. Leo's breath caught as a few key details clicked into place to explain what he was seeing. The files Bradburn had kept on Tigra had been one of the first to burn, and many personal details hadn't survived. The descriptors that had survived said that Tigra was large enough that he'd once picked up and thrown a hover bike. Until this moment, Leo hadn't had a reason to suspect that Tigra wasn't a Nulf like the others in Bradburn's collection. After all, Tigra was a Nulfin name. Orange, black, and white fur was the most common combination for Nulfs. But Leo's erroneous assumptions were on him, because the man in the cell wasn't a Nulf. He was a tiger. The Genthis comment should have been Leo's first clue. After what happened to Fanina, Nulfs could be found in any of the bulbs, so it wasn't that immigration was a foreign concept to Siphus. But this was no Nulf. This was a colossus. Bradburn would have looked like a scrawny teenager next to this man. Looking at the man's enormous mitts for hands, Leo felt like they could probably snap him in half as easily as he might snap a necrol stick. Even laid out on the bed, it wasn't hard to see that Tigra was probably well over 8 feet tall when standing. Leo cleared his throat. You are wasting time, Tigra said, his face pressed to the wall with eyes firmly screwed shut. My answer is same. I do not want. Every word this man uttered in his thick accent seemed ready to rattle Leo's teeth together. Do not want what, exactly? Leo asked. Your offer is waste of breath and time. I've never even met you before. I think you have the wrong chief. The curled-up tiger opened one massive eye. The firearm reflected oddly in it, recalling Leo's childhood biology lessons. Sneppards could hear the whisper of grass shoots rubbing together. Nolfs could smell your emotions. And tigers could see in the dark. That was a bit of an oversimplification, as they still needed some light to see, but the image had always stuck with Leo. Who is you? Leo cleared his throat again, marveling at the deep rumble of Tigra's voice. My name is Leo Parsons, the new police chief of District 3. The eye narrowed in suspicion at him, and Leo couldn't make out much detail about its hue in the orange glow of the firearm overhead. Where Bradburn? Retired now, actually. Tigra's bed creaked like it was a frightened animal being crushed under his weight. Leaning back, he peered towards the bars, but made no move to get up from his bed. A sharp ridge sat just behind his nose, a bump in his otherwise smooth snout. He sniffed heavily. Smells like rotting fish. Bradburn not retire until Bradburn dead. Yeah, Leo admitted. Up until a few weeks ago, I would have thought the same. Bradburn hasn't taken a day off in his life. Where Bradburn, if not here? He sent you? Leo shook his head. He's moved on up in the world. He's trying to join the 13, but there's been some complications there. And he didn't send me. If anything, I think he was trying to help the world forget you. So I'm here to figure out why. Tigra snorted then. Of course world forget Tigra. Tigra been here since Bradburn was puny stickman like you. A time when Bradburn was ever like Leo? There was just no way. Bradburn had probably benched his mother's organs in the womb and popped out able to lift her overhead before he could even walk. Leo couldn't imagine a time that man had ever been small. And yet, to the massive tiger here, everyone must seem small. Bradburn would visit you often? In early days, Bradburn come. Bradburn bring deals from minister. Say he bring us future. His future smells of rotting fish. There were others with you once. Leo consulted his pocket notepad, squinting in the terrible lighting to read the names he'd written down. Dravota, Arana, Forohana, Varahina, Salatra. Bits of rubble scraped off the wall as Tigra ran a massive thumb claw across the stone. It left a jagged line that looked to be one of many thousands. Yes, they were here. And who were they? Friends, Tigra said, in a voice so low his act of scraping the wall almost covered the word. All of you? Tigra nodded, rubbing something between fingers the size of cigars. Yes, we were friends. So where are they now? Tigra sighed, his bed protesting even with that little movement. All gone. I know not where. Bradburn come. Bradburn take them to minister. They never come back. First was Forohana, then Arana, then Drevota, then Salatra, then Varahina. Bradburn make offer to Tigra at same time. But I spit in face. All times. He chuckled at that, wiping at his crooked pink nose with a sausage of a thumb. Every one of your friends took his offer. Everyone except you. Tigra nodded, exposing his white, tufted chest as he rolled onto his back and propped his head up in his hands. I want no part of rotting fish deal. He hadn't meant to do it, but subconsciously Leo had been drifting closer to the bars. He was still out of his own arm's reach, but he wasn't sure what kind of reach this striped monster had, so he quietly took a step back. What was Bradburn's offer? Do work for minister. Have chance for family. For new life. You didn't want that? Family for Tigra? There is no one for Tigra in Cyphus. Nolfs have Nolfs. Snapbirds have Snapbirds. No tigers in Cyphus. Too far from Gentis. Family would not work. No way to have children. Lonely as that sounded, it made sense. Genetic rejection was one of the reasons mixed nightclubs were so popular. Those who wanted fun without responsibility were often more than willing to look past differences in species. But for those who actually wanted children, mixing didn't work. Not that it was something Leo dwelt on often. He already knew that he'd be a terrible father. What about a new life? He asked. Tigris snorted. Is not living when people watch over shoulder at all time. Is not living when they tell you how to live. If they're going to run Tigra life anyway, might as well stay here. At least here is quiet. Leo could understand the sentiment. Funny, he might even agree with it if he were in the same position. With as few neighbors as you have, it makes sense that it'd be quiet. They ever bring anyone else down here? Tigris shrugged, his elbows brushing the wall behind him as his toes almost reached the bars. He smirked. The ones they want to scare. When they have problem up above, they bring problem down here to spend time with Tigra. Sometime, multiple problem. Sometime they unlock cells in here and just lock big door. That gets fun. Do they ever let you out? Take you upstairs? Tigra held up a single finger that looked thicker than both of Leo's thumbs combined. Once? Leo asked, unable to hide his incredulity. Every week, Tigra added, and Leo felt some of his surprise drain away. I am allowed to bathe in sunlight after every storm day. Make other prisoners nervous. Sometimes others start fights, but Tigra always finishes them. There was a glint to his eyes that wasn't just a firm reflection. Then he shrugged. Is good exercise, since locked below ground all other times. Leo studied him through the bars, and couldn't help observing. They're all afraid of you. Not just the guards, but the prisoners, too. Tigra grinned. Afraid is good. Instinct happens when afraid. Learn who is tiger and who is mouse. Many who think they are tiger are actually mouse. So which is Bradburn? Tigra scowled, then spit at the bars. Not at Leo directly, though he did sidestep instinctively. Bradburn is big snake who swallows mouse but has breath of rotting fish. He is no tiger. Tigra sat up a few inches, off-white teeth of his curling grin flashing orange in the dim light. Which are you, new chief? Tiger, mouse, or snake? Leo snorted. Mouse. I don't think it's even a contest. With a satisfied smirk, Tigra laid back, and his bed sounded like it was seconds from expiring. Probably, he said in his thick accent. Probably. Why are you in here? Leo asked. He'd read the report, or at least the portion of the report that had survived, and had a decent idea, but it was worth finding out more. Tigra laughed, and the sound echoed through the small room and its even smaller adjoining cells. I played chicken with Bradburn. My hoverbike went through his passenger window. His grin widened. He turned. I didn't. Was to prove point, but not point Bradburn appreciate. Bike embedded in his back seat. Missed his head by inches. Tigra extended two large claws, drawing them together to emphasize the gap. Then he shook his head. Should have used more Aurum. Leo felt his jaw drop. You almost killed Bradburn? Tigra laughed again, throwing his hands up in the air. What's the point? In game of chicken, real chicken, 1 or 2 people die. Ideally, neither people chicken, and then simply matter of who is tougher and survive. But the world is full of chickens. People do not commit. Is shame. Still, to picture Bradburn swerving from anything? Bradburn didn't turn for anybody. He was the wrecking ball, the bulldozer who plowed through and had his way. But he wasn't stupid either. He can and did cut his losses when he'd been beat. Leo had only seen it happen on a few rare occasions, and Bradburn never lost the same way twice. So he arrested you, and that's how you got here? Tigra's grin clung to his face like a child clinging to the bliss of youth. Good times. And the other charges? The bed squeaked as Tigra readjusted. I was problem for a long time, he admitted. Sometime I punch Warden. Other time I punch Roberto for cutting on ice cream night. Other time I tie two guards together at ankles and dangle them over cafeteria like piñata. Another time I grab Bradburn collar and make him kiss bars. Meant to bite his nose too, but was too slow. He shot me for that. Good times. That last one inspired Leo to take another intentional step back from the bars. When's the last time Bradburn came to visit? Tigra let out a low, rumbling sigh. Time in here is hard. Maybe 8 year? Probably more. And when did he come to get your last friend? Before. He come back for me. Make me offer. I ask him to shake. Once I had his hand, I grab his collar and yank and boom! He kiss bars. I left him with lots of bruise. He left me with few bullet hole. He tell me I could rot in here. I tell him his breath already rotten like fish. And then he never come back. Leo paused, taking a moment to process everything he'd heard. You and your friends, you could all do magic before coming here? Bradburn's notes had implied this, but Leo wanted to be sure. Magic? Tigra repeated in his thick accent that made the GI sound more like a G. Yes, we could magic. Who taught you? Tigra scratched at his chin. We were, what you say, rescues. Magic in our blood. You were born with it. Tigra met his gaze with a mischievous grin. As were you. To be born is to have magic. It is free to all who would hold it, but, he admitted, we did have someone who taught us. Who? Tigra let out a guffaw that bounced around the room like they were in an echo chamber. Leo's ears flattened instinctively, but he weathered it. Now I know Bradburn send you. To chicken to come himself, but always ask same thing. Who teach us magic? Tigra has lips like walls of prison. Others may talk, but I will not talk this thing. But, if you like, I do have something I could say. He sat up then, beckoning with a finger towards the bars. Leo almost went for it, but upon remembering Tigra's story about introducing Bradburn to the bars, he thought better of it. He shook his head and stayed where he was. I've kissed bars before. I don't need to lose any more teeth. A second guffaw echoed from Tigra, and this time he slapped his knee. He leveled a giant orange and black finger at Leo. You already smarter chief than Bradburn. Bradburn would know I would grab him, but would assume he could outstrong me. Outstrong. Not right word. How you say? Overpower? Leo offer. Oh, yes, power over. Good word. You realize I would power over you, and so you do not come close. Wise? While the enormous tiger amused himself, Leo rolled the conversation back a few steps in his head. Bradburn wanted to know who taught you magic? Did he say why? Tigra shrugged, earning fresh pleas from his bed springs for an end to their torment. Bradburn offered trade. Talk of magic for talk with minister. In my experience, talk of magic not common in sci-fi. No, Leo admitted. It's really not. Naira's the first person I've met who teaches it. Naira? Sorry, you would probably know her as Salatra. Tigra propped himself up on his elbows so fast, Leo thought he might launch himself at the bars. If that had happened, Leo wasn't confident they could withstand the weight. But Tigra remained on his bed, eyes alight. Little Salatra is teacher of magic? Yeah, she teaches alchemy at the university now. Actually sitting up, Tigra scooted forward a few inches so that his feet touched the floor. Salatra would be a good teacher, he said with an approving nod. Most people learn few magic at time, is easier. But Orana and Salatra both learn all magic same time. Very, what is Snappered word for good at thing? Talented? Tigra nodded eagerly. Yes, talented. So Bradburn Fishtail maybe not so rotten. Then his eyes narrowed in suspicion. Unless you lie to trick me into make deal. Have I offered you anything? Leo asked. After a few moments of careful study, Tigra said, No. Then, Firearm dancing in the tiger's deeply saturated eyes, he asked, Do you have deal for Tigra? Leo wasn't sure. He hadn't come down here planning to do anything other than learn. But the more he learned and dug into the past, the less he wanted to know. Like Tigra's rotting fish, something stunk about all of it. Maybe, he finally said. What does Tigra want? Tigra's hands brushed through matted fur at his knees. Leo had the sudden realization that the man was probably only allowed to shower once a week. Unless he felt like taking a sponge bath with a sink that barely held more water than his cupped hand. I want to feel warm of sun any time. All time. He looked down at his fur-covered body. I kept warm most time, but not like warm of sun. Leo nodded. Anything else? Tigra scratched absently at his chest. I like quiet. But I like people to talk more than just guard talk. Something between would be nice. Leo stared at the so-called monster behind the bars, knowing that's all anyone in this prison would ever see. He sighed. You don't want freedom? To get let out like your friends? A wry half-grin came to Tigra's muzzle as he reached up to scratch the back of his head. Leo almost thought he saw a few black specks fly through the air as those massive fingers combed, but it was impossible to be certain when the lighting was this poor. I cannot. If I get out, they come back in. Leo frowned. What? Warden probably talk. Say I escape. Twice I escape. Once with Selatra, but we did not want to leave without all friends, so we came back. Second time was after almost all friends make deal with Bradburn. Bradburn say all deal void if one of us run. And Varahina had turn for make deal at the time. So Tigra return, Tigra stay, so they keep deal. Leo felt his blood beginning to boil. All the rest got out on good behavior. Couldn't you just do the same? Tigra smirked. Bradburn was witness for them. He would not witness for me. He hate me because he know that I know he chicken. I was good for some time, but it did not matter. So I stopped worrying about be good and just try to live. His smirk widened into a mischievous grin. A life more fun with guard piñatas and tasty ice cream. So he'd given up. Rather than cater to whatever Bradburn and Paddock wanted with the rest of his Alchemancer friends, he'd chosen to bite the bullet and stay here. Well, that certainly made it harder for Leo to do anything for him. Maybe not impossible, but definitely harder. He'd need to talk it out with Melissa. In the meantime, maybe there was something he could do for him. Two birds with one stone, in fact. An intrusive idea wormed its way into Leo's brain, and he let it take root. The guards might not go for it, but if he worded it just right... Mr. Tigra, I want to thank you for your time, Leo said, before giving the little formal bow he associated with the alchemy teacher. Tigra's eyes widened. Leo smiled. We have a mutual friend. Well, acquaintance is a better word, he admitted. I've worked with Salatra a bit. Admittedly, I don't know her nearly as well as I should, but I owe her my life, and I still need to thank her for that someday. If it's any consolation, last I saw her, she was doing quite well. She had to be doing well, if she checked herself out of the hospital after going through the same explosion as Leo. The fact she hadn't turned up again since then was a bit of a concern, however. Now that he had Bradburn's notes, that included Naira's address. Maybe that should be his next stop. Checking his wristwatch, it was well into the evening. Probably better to check on her in the morning. Now, after his talk with Tigra, he'd have plenty to talk about with her. Leo's list of questions for her was growing quite long.
You will see her?
I plan to, Leo said.
Don't tell her I'm here.
Leo blinked, then frowned. Why not? Tigra ran his thumbs together with a wry smile.
Because she would be upset. She might try to escape me from here. Then all deals go poof. It's better I stay and she not know.
Drumming a finger on his leg, Leo stared at the Goliath of a tiger for a few long moments. Then he gave a quick nod. I'll be careful what I say. Tigra gave a nod of approval, and that was the end of it. The warden checked in a short time later, having taken quite the catnap.
Well, you're still in one piece,
he noted as he locked the door behind them. The two started walking back towards the exit.
Get everything you need.
Glancing back over his shoulder, Leo sighed. I got some things, but not everything. You know how it goes. The warden nodded, and they continued. It wasn't until they were back in the relative safety of the warden's office that Leo fielded his intrusive idea. Warden, the new kit from the hospital incident?
Oh, the biter in interrogation.
Leo nearly bit his tongue. He didn't want to encourage this kind of culture, but he needed to play on it just enough to pitch his idea. He had to present it so that the warden would assume credit. Even so, engaging it at all made Leo feel like he just jumped into a puddle of dross. Yeah, the cocky youngster. Where's he getting housed? The warden smirked.
Attitude like his. Figured we'd leave the muzzle on and stick him in a 3-man cell on the first floor. They'll break him of that attitude real fast.
Is that going to be enough? Leo wanted to vomit just for asking something so horrible, but he had to play the game. Yeah, that'll make an impression, but will it really break him? Or will it just make him double down on being a troublemaking punk? Leo knew the answer. It would absolutely break the kit. This was a calculated, but dangerous gamble, and the kit was already in a bad spot. Bringing a hand to his chin, the warden considered.
I suppose there's a chance that those idiot mongrels on first floor take too much liking to him, and he'd just feel encouraged in his ways.
That would be quite a problem, Leo added. Then others might be encouraged by his behavior, and you could have a riot.
There's a couple spare cells in B2. He wouldn't be within arm's reach of the murderous lot we keep down in the dark, but he'd be within earshot. I know they can whisper some pretty unpleasant things. A couple days in there might do the trick.
That would definitely break the kid even worse, especially after Leo's warning to him. He'd planted the seed of doubt, laid a bit of groundwork, and steadied his aim. Now it was time to take his shot. You know, Tigra was saying he hadn't been let out to play in a little while. From what I've observed, if there's anyone around here that can break someone of a cocky attitude, might be him. Leo watched with disgust as the wheels turned in the warden's eyes, saw the bit of sick glee as the ramifications of Leo's suggestion took hold.
Chief Parsons, I like the way you think.
That makes one of us, Leo thought. Chapter 28. Girls' Day Out. For the first time since being thrown in the cell downstairs, Naira found herself alone. Yes, there were still plenty of guards walking the Dolahan estate. More now that Renetta had revealed herself to the world again. Even Marston, who usually took it upon himself to physically hound Naira, was was preoccupied with increasing security and preparing for some kind of attack. It seemed that he was finally open to the idea that Naira might not be the source of that attack. Sorry, I tried to readjust my chair and it didn't work very well. Small comfort in light of reality. Cyphus knew that Renetta Dolahan was alive. That meant Paddock knew that Naira had failed. The more thought Naira gave to Renetta's theory, the more it made sense. Her history with the Minister of Justice was brief. She'd only met him once when he'd signed off on her parole. He'd been an unpleasant man who drank wine and nibbled caviar in front of her in an attempt to impress her with his wealth and power. He was a man who liked others to grovel. Naira had only been born when Silatra bent the knee. Like many of the 13, he owned a tower towards the center of the bowl. It was the sort of multi-storied monstrosity that hurt her neck to take in. As the chief had taken her through it, there had been so many doors. Who knew what secrets lay within? And of course, with Chief Bradburn personally carrying out the duties of her parole officer, it seemed likely Paddock had learned about her through him. She couldn't fault him, exactly. Bradburn had helped get her started on her new life, even made parts of her record disappear so she could actually become a teacher. But people talked, and dross piles like Paddock probably listened. The prism canister at her waist pinched a bit as she walked. Pulling it out, she turned it in her fingers and examined it. Just a couple weeks ago, she'd stolen it, fully intending to use it to break out and escape. Instead, she'd accepted a job offer from Madame Anima in a pantsuit to continue her role as a killer. Renetta called it security, but a knife didn't stop being a knife just because you sliced fruit with it instead of throats. Still, Naira now had a solid suspect and an opportunity. It wasn't like her to sit around. Looking around only confirmed that few of the guards on duty gave her anything more than a cursory glance. No one watching the prison door. It was time to let Silatra back out of the cage. Naira hurried to the kitchen, nodding to the chef who was prepping lunch. The chef was a friendly man, one of the nicer sneppards on the estate, and had often watched with some curiosity as Naira and Moira had gone through their lessons. He greeted her now, and she returned it, snipping the conversation off as fast as she could. Her bag hung from a coat rack in the corner where Moira had left it. Shouldering it, Naira retrieved rack after rack from the freezer, gathering up all the aurum, aquam, terram, and curum they'd made. Much of it was high grade, and the crystals were beautifully translucent. She even retrieved a few Fyrum and Electrum crystals she'd snuck in with the batches when no one had been looking. There was no Necrum, which was fine. Naira hated the stuff, and she wasn't about to teach Moira how to make it. Blood was a dangerous reagent anyways. "Field trip," the chef called out as he stirred something in a large bowl. Naira flinched, feeling suddenly guilty. Not because of what she was doing, but just from knowing that someone was watching. She kept working anyway. Having loaded her bag with every prepped crystal she could find, she gathered up the remaining supply of shimmer. She would have preferred prism, but re-upping her dose in between every use of magic was better than not having access to magic at all. "Educational exercise with Moira," Naira lied, with a smile she didn't feel. The chef nodded, staring down into his bowl. "Good. That's good." Her bag quite full, Naira strode for the door. "You know, you've been good for Miss Moira." Naira's hand stopped on the door, having only opened it by a fraction. "Both the madam and the mistress have suffered in the loss of the former Master Dolahan," the chef continued, oblivious to the foot Naira now tapped as she listened politely. "They were both closer to him than each other, and haven't coped well in his absence. Miss Moira doesn't bring guests over, and either locks herself in her room or wanders the city till Sergei brings her back. Many of us worried for both of them. And then you came along. You rescued Madame Dolahan, and based on how her demeanor has improved in the last few weeks, I dare see you rescued Miss Moira too." Naira's lips tightened, but she didn't correct him. She kept her gaze fixed on the door, wanting nothing more than to leave. She shook her head. "Alchemy's done all the heavy lifting there. That and Moira's own eagerness to learn. I'm just a teacher." The chef smiled. "Seems to me, hero might be the better word." Naira laughed without meaning to, but the chef seemed unbothered. No, Naira wasn't a hero. Heroes didn't kill people for selfish reasons. Pushing the door, she walked out. Again, the guards paid her no mind as she made her way towards the garage, even with her suspiciously full bag. When she'd first made up her mind to do this, she'd given no thought to the effect it would have on Moira. But now, the accusing thoughts were hard to silence. "Anima, take that, chef," she thought. Every fiber of Naira was restless. She'd been cooped up in this cage for weeks. At least going out and investigating alone would feel like she had a sliver of control remaining in her own life. Despite her very pressing personal mission, she was developing a fondness for the eager young girl who reveled in the magic of alchemy. Besides, even if Naira found her family, she might still need Madame 13's help to rescue them. So this was only a temporary excursion. She'd come back. After she'd had a chance to stretch her wings. Moira stayed on her mind even as she grabbed the handle for the garage door, and it took her a moment to realize why. She'd have been smelling her the entire way here. Naira's stomach sank. She really didn't want to run into the girl yet. That would throw a huge wrench in her plans. Resolving herself, she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. A new scent came to her, mingling with Moira's. It was at once familiar and nostalgic. Then she heard the struggle. "You can't do this! This is degrading, and I have basic rights that you're ignoring and willfully violating. Put me down!" Tightening the bag strap over her shoulder, Naira reached in to grab a deep blue crystal. Moving quickly, she walked towards the source of the noise. "We already agreed this was the plan B. B for bag." "No, this is plan S. S for stupid, sucky plan that sucks so much. Now let me go or I will start using claws." "You had your chance, Pips. She said no. We're gonna change her mind." That voice. Naira hadn't heard it in years, but the scent suddenly clicked. Increasing her pace, she passed parked car after parked car. She stopped as the struggle came into view. Naomi was tall now, almost as tall as Naira. Her hair no longer hung in gentle curls, but instead was spiked into a ridiculous pink-tipped mohawk. Her shirt was unnecessarily low-cut, looking unlike anything Farana would have ever let her wear. With one arm, she held a rather flustered Moira almost a full foot off the ground, her feet kicking uselessly through the air. With the other, Naomi was holding open a large backpack, which she was attempting to feed Moira into, feet first. "What's going on?" Naira asked. The demanding mother voice she wanted to use was on hiatus at the shock of finding one of her boy's childhood friends. "Mrs. N?" Naomi asked in surprise. "Naira, help! This psycho floozy wants to kidnap me!" Moira continued to struggle, and Naomi's grasp loosened until she slipped free. Moira's feet hit the ground. Scooping up the bag with both hands, she flung it as far from Naomi as she could. It sailed over the hood of a nearby limo and disappeared from view. Without wasting a second, the young snepperd ran over to take shelter at Naira's side. So overwhelmed at finally seeing a friendly face, Naira ignored Moira as she stepped forward to embrace Naomi. "What?" Moira called out, the indignation in her voice sounding reminiscent of her mother's. "Don't hug her! I just told you she tried to kidnap me!" Naira held the embrace for a few moments longer. Pushing back, she moved her grip to Naomi's shoulders before looking the young adult woman up and down. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same, Mrs. N." Moira couldn't believe her luck. She'd known her mother would turn down her request, and she'd suspected that Naomi wouldn't take it well. But to be manhandled because of her stunted size was humiliating. And now, the person who'd found them together was excitedly having conversation with the would-be kidnapper, as if she'd stumbled across an old friend rather than a crime in progress. Of course, the reaction really shouldn't have surprised Moira. It made sense that Zalota, or Tazael, or Taz, or whatever people wanted to call him, it made sense that his friends would know his mother. Naira was in the process of recounting how she'd come to be here, though she left out all the cool parts, like the hoverbike chase, or her use of alchemy to drop dozens of guards who might otherwise have physical advantages over her. And then the moment came that Moira dreaded. "Taz is going to be so happy to hear you're okay," Naomi said, unaware of the bombshell she'd just dropped. Moira flinched, guilt consuming her and turning her stomach. She should have mentioned this over a week ago, when she'd first put it together. Instead, she'd kept it to herself. Why? Because she'd been afraid Naira would leave, and Moira would be left without an alchemy teacher. A selfish, stupid reason. Indeed, as she watched, Naira's face lit up with more joy than she'd ever seen the woman express. Joy that could have happened sooner if Moira had found the courage to do the right thing. Naira took Naomi's hand in her own, and the slender goddess of lust, promiscuity, and hormones actually looked embarrassed by the physical contact. "You've seen Tazel recently?" Naira asked. "I mean, a couple days ago, yeah." "Where is he?" Naomi flinched a bit, raising her hand to scratch at the base of her hair. She offered a pained smile. "You know I can't tell you, Mrs. N. The hideout is sacred." "The hideout," Naira repeated. "He's at the hideout?" "When I left 2 nights ago, he was. Yeah. He's got a thing planned soon, so he might... Mrs. N, are you okay?" Naira didn't look okay. Moira saw the slight wobble in her knees, heard the change in breathing through her nose. Naira's knees buckled, and Naomi awkwardly caught her arm. Moira rushed forward to support Naira's other side, and together they helped her take a seat on the floor. I'm all right," Naira said, eyes misting and distant. "I just need a moment." True to her word, in less than a minute, Naira had recovered enough to speak. She started telling her story again, and this time she went back to the beginning. By the time she had finished, Moira felt a twisting in her gut for not saying something sooner. Naira had a right to know that her son was alive and safe, no matter if it meant someone else would walk out of Moira's life. Beside her, Naomi scowled. "Your mother locked up Mrs. N like a pet deerhound?" "Listen," Moira barked, returning the scowl. "My mother's her own person, and as we already discussed, I have no control over anything she does. Don't lump me in with her." They both glared at each other. Naira chuckled before turning to Naomi. "Moira's the primary reason I'm not locked up anymore." Smirking, Moira stuck out her tongue. Naomi just rolled her eyes, but it still felt like a victory. "What about you?" Naira asked. "What have you been up to? What brings you here?" "Yeah, Pips. What have we been up to?" Moira's scowl returned. "I don't want to be lumped in with you either." "Pips?" Naira asked, raising an eyebrow. No, not Naira too. Moira had to nip it in the bud. "She won't stop calling me Pips, even though she knows full well that my name is Moira." "Because you make funny faces when I call you Pips." "It is not funny." "It absolutely is." "Is not." "Is too." Now it was Naomi's turn to stick out her smooth pink tongue. She widened her eyes like a crazy person and shook her head side to side, making her ears and her stupid perfect hair flop around. "So you two are friends?" Naira asked. "Yes." Naomi nodded with a draw-sucking grin. "No," Moira said with as much emphasis as she could muster. "She's just shy," Naomi whispered confidentially, as if Moira of all people couldn't hear it. "Ugh, Seed Mother, this was the worst." Again, Naira asked what Naomi was doing here, and now it was Naomi's turn to spill the proverbial beans. Much to Moira's surprise, Naomi didn't sugarcoat anything. She went into detail about what had happened at the hospital, though she didn't say anything about Tazel making the call to leave their friend behind. Instead, she said "we," as if it had been some sort of democratic decision between them. She also conveniently left out the part about Tazel intentionally running over a snop. "So I came to Moira for help," Naomi concluded. "Seemed like she was loaded enough her mom might post bail. And to her credit, Pips did go ask." Moira indulged in a huff. "If I could reach your face, I'd punch it every time you refused to use my name." That same draw-sucking grin returned to Naomi's face. "Then I'm glad Seed Mother gave me jaws of steel. Try not to break your hand." "Did it work?" Naira asked. "Punching her in the face? I haven't tried it yet." Naira sighed, rubbing her forehead with several fingers. "No, asking your mother for help." Moira shook her head. "Dulla hands don't do handouts, especially for strangers." "Maybe I'm not the one who needs to be convinced with a good face punching," Naomi offered. Or maybe it's both, Moira countered, seriously considering jumping over Naira's lap to get at the punk goddess. Girls, can we please focus? I can focus, Moira asserted, ignoring Naira's look of skepticism. Sorry, Mrs. N. She's just too much fun to rile up. It's like roughhousing with a defanged deerhound. How? How did this frustrating woman always get the last word? Every single retort that sprang to Moira's mind was immediately dismissed as too stupid or childish to try. But she still had her tongue and her glare, so she silently put both to work. Naomi returned them with far too much evident pleasure. Ever goal-oriented, Naira asked, So Rolf's already been locked up? Naomi nodded. They took him to District 8 a few days ago. And to confirm, your mother's not willing to post bail? Her mother had not lacked for words in response to the request, but Moira didn't care to repeat any of them. Biting her lip, she gave a small nod. Yeah. Mrs. N, they're trying to pin the whole thing on him, and I can't stand the thought of him being locked up forever because I didn't do anything to help him. Naira sighed, considering. Moira watched her and wished that she could read her thoughts. Maybe with enough fractal or concentrated prism in her system she could? She'd have to ask Naira later if that was the thing. Eventually, Naira spoke again. I've spent several months agonizing over the son I now know is safe. It doesn't return Elaine, but knowing Tazel is okay is an immense relief. For that, I owe you more than I know how to repay, Naomi. Oh, Fanina. Moira really should have said something sooner. Instead, she'd put it off because she was afraid. And now Naomi just bumbled in and said things without realizing their significance. It was hard not to be jealous of the warmth and favor Moira saw blooming in Naira's eyes. Naira let out a long breath. I really shouldn't be offering this. Maybe it's just because I've been locked away recently too, but I have escaped District 8 before. What? Moira knew she'd been locked up for her days of stealing and racing hoverbikes, but a prison break? How much cooler could Naira get? Before she realized, she was blurting, You've broken out of prison before? Just once, Naira said, as if it wasn't a big deal and anybody could do it. You're saying you can do it again? Naomi asked, and Moira felt a pang of pity at the hope in her eyes. It was accompanied by lots of annoyance at the woman's general behavior and Moira's own insecurities, but Moira did still feel a bit sorry for her. I'm saying, Naira said, with a long, careful breath, I'm willing to try. Why the brack did we only bring 2 hover bikes? Moira called up at the woman leaning over her. It was hard to make out Naira's expression while staring at the underside of her chin, but her response was cheerful, even if it was almost lost to the wind. Because for now, we only have 2 drivers. Need I remind you, you insisted on coming. Safest place for me is with you, Moira said. It was both the convenient and logical answer. Her ear itched, and she reached to scratch it, only for her fingers to bump against plastic. Naira had insisted that they wear helmets, and Moira's only consolation was that Naomi had been just as put out as she was. Ultimately, Naira had had the last word, and they'd both listened. Safest place for you is at home, Naira said. But they were already underway, and Moira was confident she wouldn't turn around now. Can't we go faster? Don't need to yet. Wouldn't be helpful to get pulled over for speeding on stolen bikes. Been there, done that. Night behind bars and big fine for first offense. Week and an even bigger fine for the second. Last I checked, my tally was over 10, so I'd rather not deal with that inconvenience. Moira sighed and conceded the point. It was her first time on a hoverbike after all, so she really couldn't complain. It tilted more than she expected, and she gripped the frame between her knees so hard on a few turns that she probably rubbed some fur free. Still, the wind rushed over her body in a uniquely gratifying way, and she quickly came to enjoy the turns. After a few blocks, Naira spoke up. Want to learn? Did fish swim? Birds fly? Deerhounds eat meat? Of course she wanted to learn. And she cursed her instinct for making her blurt, Really? as if she wasn't absolutely sure of what she wanted. District 6 has notoriously low speed limits, but that leads it to be low traffic too. We'll cut through there on our way to District 8, and I'll let you do some of the driving. The next few minutes were spent going over some of the basics. How to read the gauges, how to speed up and how to brake, the importance of easing the throttle while accelerating, and the equal importance of easing it back to counter your momentum and decelerate. Knowing where your legs were relative to the maneuvering thrusters, how to tilt with your turn to keep your balance, how to signal your turns, both with lights and by hand. Most of the instructions were pretty mundane, but that didn't dampen Moira's excitement. Eventually, they reached the promised district, and Naira ankled down a side street. Only after bringing the hoverbike to a complete stop did she hand over control. Gripping the handlebars closer to the center made her squeeze Moira's body a little tighter, but that actually helped. Moira was a bit less worried about falling off the side of the hoverbike as she screwed up a turn. Carefully, she reached out and gripped the throttle. To her annoyance, she had to lean farther forward to reach it. As a result, when she tried to straighten up, she twisted the throttle, and the thrusters burst to life. Naira's hand came to rest over hers, voice surprisingly calm as they hurtled towards a fence. Remember, ease into it, and relax. Your first instinct is going to be to seize up because you're panicking. Don't do that. Just relax. Gently, she twisted Moira's wrist the other direction, slowing the hoverbike. And I know it's obvious, but point the bike where you want it to go. Moira tugged on the handlebars, steering too far towards the other direction. She'd actually driven a car once before. Sergei had let her sit on his lap after a particularly drossy day. But this hoverbike was way more touchy of a machine than a car. Just the slightest adjustment on her part seemed to make it respond. How did Naira drive it so smoothly? They made their way down the street in short, controlled bursts. Moira managed not to hit a single parked car, protruding mailbox, picket fence, lamppost, or pedestrian. She limped down the next street, and by the third street was getting a bit of a feel for it. At every street, Naomi zoomed ahead to wait for them at the next stop sign. She probably wasn't thrilled about the impromptu lesson, but Moira had just as much claim to Naira's time as Naomi did. Not so bad, right? Naira asked. Yeah, Moira called back. I think I'm getting it. You're doing good. Is it fun? Oh, yeah. Good. Come tonight, I'll give you a real demonstration of how much fun you can have on one of these. Much as Moira didn't relish the idea of giving up driving privileges, it was hard not to be excited by a promise like that. Naira was pleasantly surprised at how quickly Moira learned. Like most things the girl applied herself to, she did well. It wasn't clear that she had a natural talent for driving the way Naira did, but she was at least capable. There were a couple more close calls, and once where they nearly dumped the bike, but on the whole, the driving lesson went well. It was afternoon by the time they reached District 8. Traffic started to pick up, and Naira took over the driving again. She was pleased to note that Moira didn't feel so tense beneath her anymore. Naira had taught her boys a lot of skills, but driving had never been one of them. With the paltry earnings she brought in from teaching, and Elaine brought in from his performances, all their money had to go to the house and food. Plus, the smooth road to a driver's license for Sneppards was a non-magnetic road for Nulfs, one fraught with tolls and hidden fees waiting to jump you like snops at speed traps. So it felt good to teach someone to drive. As a bonus, it offered a distraction from the jumble of emotional mess that was her head right now. Her son, the only son she had left, was not only alive, but had never been captured. Naomi hadn't had an explanation for why he'd stopped visiting other than his group activities had been taking priority, but he was safe. Thank Seed Mother, he was safe. It still left dozens of questions. What about Elaine? Where was he? Who had him? Was he safe? Was he still alive? And why couldn't Naira shake the feeling that she'd already crossed paths with her son? The answer was obvious. Before, when she'd assumed him captured, she'd been able to ignore the evidence. But now, knowing he'd never been taken, she'd caught his scent at the Dullahan factory. Though she'd written it off then, as stray traces left on his captor, it seemed far more likely now that he'd been there. She remembered peering through the skylight, catching a glimpse of a lone Nolf shooting at Dolahan's security, of dead bodies at the base of a stairwell. She remembered catching his scent before Detective Parsons' car exploded, of writing it off because it was impossible for him to be there. She'd convinced herself that she'd imagined his scent simply because she missed him so much. Now it seemed far more likely that the simplest answer was the truth. The ramifications of that were headache-inducing. Her son? A killer? Using guns? Was she any better? Hadn't she killed to protect her family? How much of that had been excusable? Had they really twisted her arm? Or had Salatra just been waiting for the chance to strike back? Each question served as a fresh pounding in her skull as she drove through traffic. Moira was saying something, or rather trying to say something over the wind. Naira shook her head as if to shake the thoughts away. What did you say? Wasn't that your turn? The glance over her shoulder showed that the girl was right. It was. Sorry. We'll improvise and make it work. Seed Mother. How long had she been lost in self-reflection? She shuddered to think what would have happened to her and her passenger if driving wasn't second nature. Besides, she had a jailbreak to plan. Her thoughts and questions needed to wait. There'd be no room for distraction tonight. So what exactly is the plan, Mrs. N? Naomi asked as they stared at the cold metal and concrete walls of the District 8 prison. They'd parked their hoverbikes in the visitor parking, and now stood beside them gawking. This place seemed to sap anybody of the will to move. It loomed like a mountain before ants. It was a fair question. While Naira wasn't sure how much she liked her answer, she did at least have one. Well, she began, sun's up for a couple more hours, so I'm thinking that while visiting hours are good, I walk in there, say I'm Rolf's mother, and demand to see him. That's it? Moira asked, folding her arms. They're not going to just let him walk out because his mother is here, right? No, probably not. But the visiting area isn't nearly so guarded as the Nolfin block itself. By getting them to bring him at least that far, it's a lot less work to get him out. Just in case, I brought our full stores tonight. The people here are about the worst types I know, so I'm not afraid to get my hands a little dirty. Naomi nodded approvingly, but Moira didn't seem convinced. So we walk in there, ask to see him, and beat up a bunch of guards on the way out? Won't that just make his sentence worse if we fail? Or if he gets caught again? Not to mention if we get locked up ourselves? Nara smirked, but she hoped not unkindly. I don't intend to fail. Worst case scenario, I get caught, and your mother posts my bail because she doesn't want to lose her precious bodyguard, assassin, whatever I am to her. But I'd rather try and fail than just accept that this is our lot in life. Don't worry, Pips. Mrs. N and I will go in there and get Rolf. You can wait out here. Just make sure the hoverbikes don't get towed while we're gone. My name, Moira began, puffing herself up to a height that was only mid-chest on Naira and Naomi, is not Pips. My name is... Moira? Naira interrupted. Naomi's right. Your mother would be devastated if anything happened to you. You should stay with the bikes. What? No. Moira, listen. No, you listen, Moira snapped. Naira blinked at the interruption. Moira's nostrils were flared in a way that bunched her whiskers, and her eyes were alight in the waning sunlight. I am sick of being left out and overlooked because people don't think I can carry my weight, she continued. I know I'm small, but that just makes me less heavy to carry. Besides, if I get arrested, you can bet your sweet rump that my mother will rain fanina on this prison until I'm free. So it's safer for both of you if I come along, and it's not up for discussion. Folding her arms, the young Sneppard looked quite settled on the matter. She didn't quite have her mother's dictatorial bearing and voice of authority, but she was getting there. It wasn't like Naira didn't understand where the girl was coming from. Well then, Naira said, adjusting the alchemy bag slung over her shoulder. Let's divvy up what I brought, and then we'll see about causing a little mayhem.